Hello, teachers, parents, and educational leaders, and welcome to this episode of Breaking Down the B.E.S.T. Now, during this episode, you will get a peek into the members-only area where I have tons of resources to help you make math fun, make it click, and make it stick. There should be a link somewhere around this video where you can learn more. All right, now that we got that out of the way, let's get to it, and let's break down the standard. Welcome to Breaking Down the B.E.S.T, a video series dedicated to breaking down Florida's best standards for math. So grab something to write with and maybe even a snack. This looks good. And don't forget to put a smile on your face. There you go, I see you. And let's dive into today's best standard. Hey everyone, my name is Sarah McCarthy and I am so excited that you are joining me as we break down the following standard. Today's standard is MA.3.GR.1.1 and it says to describe and draw points, lines, line segments, rays, intersecting lines, perpendicular lines, and parallel lines. And the goal is to identify everything we just listed in two-dimensional figures. Okay, so let's break this down a little bit more. So we will be describing either verbally or written. A point is an exact spot in space. We can often refer to these as vertices, but really points can be anywhere, located on any part of the shape. So identify points. Lines are straight paths that go on and on forever in both directions. Line segments are a straight path that have two endpoints, two stopping points. A ray is a straight path that goes on and on forever in one direction, but has an endpoint in the other. Intersecting lines are lines that cross or meet at a specific point. Perpendicular lines are like this, they form right angles, and parallel lines are straight paths that never ever cross. And we will have to identify these not only in isolation but also in two-dimensional figures, okay? And a two-dimensional figure is a flat plane shape. Oh yes, this document that I'm marking up all over is not something that I've created. It's something that the Florida Department of Education releases to the public. And in these Breaking Down the B.E.S.T episodes, it's my mission to show you how I tackle these standards, break them down, make sense of them in order to create the resources that are available to you with your Taking on the B.E.S.T membership. So we'll spend about half of the episode breaking down the standard, and in the other half we will pop over to the website and I will show you how this standard connects to all the resources that you have access to with your Taking on the B.E.S.T membership. So let's continue with our benchmark clarifications. It says that we will instruction will include mathematical and real-world context. So we can keep it in just like a math context and also put it into a real-world setting, identifying all those vocabulary words. And it says that when working with perpendicular lines, of course, right angles are formed with perpendicular lines. And those right angles can still be referred to as square angles or square corners. Okay, so what are the connecting benchmarks, or what are the horizontal alignment skills for this right here? Well, in third grade, we will also be working with area and perimeter of composite figures and representing data, but I was surprised that they did not mention 3.GR.1.2, which is our quadrilateral standard, where we are identifying quadrilaterals based on parallel lines, based on perpendicular lines, and all of that. So that's a good connection to that one. Some terms that you need to know, I would say, are all the following that are in the standard itself, but they're isolating line, which is a straight path that goes on and on forever in both directions. The parallelogram is known for having exactly two sets of parallel sides. A rectangle is a quadrilateral that must have four right angles. A square must have four right angles and four equal sides. And a triangle is a polygon with three sides. Now, where are they coming from in second grade? Well, there's this standard right here, 2.GR.1.1, and this standard says to identify and draw two-dimensional figures based on attributes. So they spend time drawing triangles, rectangles, squares, pentagons, which have 5 sides, hexagons, which have 6 sides, and octagons, which have 8 sides. That's second grade, and then in fourth grade we will align up to this standard, 4.GR.1.1, which is where we will identify the types of angles in two-dimensional figures, like acute, obtuse, right angles. And then in 1.2 for the fourth grade standard, we'll practice with angle measures and additive angles. So this standard is very heavy. It used to be, when we had the Common Core standards, this used to be more of a fourth grade skill. So there's a lot that's being bumped down to third grade, which I think is great because it's hard to explain what a parallelogram is versus a rectangle without having specific instruction with parallel lines, perpendicular lines, and all of that. Now for the purpose and instructional strategies section. Here it says the purpose of this benchmark is to build important vocabulary. Yes, it is. That allows students to describe and draw those things, that all the terms that we've talked about, right? Points, lines, line segments, rays, intersecting lines, perpendicular lines, and parallel lines, and to identify these in two-dimensional figures. It says that in grade 2 that students did have some exposure to this, but in grade 3 we have a more formal vocabulary developed for this standard. And it says this standard relies heavily on vocabulary development, so we really need to make sure that we get a lot of practice with all of these words. In a mathematical context, students can find evidence of points, lines, line segments, rays, intersecting lines, perpendicular lines, and parallel lines. In real-world contexts, students can connect this to geometric attributes of real-life images like city maps or photos of objects. For example, when they're talking about mathematical, they're talking more about in shapes, just drawn shapes, like a hexagon or a pentagon or a quadrilateral of any kind. But with the real-world context, it's applying it to maps. It's applying it to images that you might see where you can identify these vocabulary words. So it's important to have both. Here they mention that the standard is necessary because of the next standard, the quadrilaterals, which is great that they mentioned it there. And here there's important to note that it says images of figures should not include hatch marks. And when they're talking about hatch marks, I believe what they're referring to is like this, saying that this side is a different size than that side, which is a different size than this side. But like in a square, for instance, we would have all the same size. So these are considered hatch marks there. And it says here, because formal instruction of angle measurements does not begin until fourth grade, it's okay for students to refer to right angles in perpendicular lines as square angles or square corners. For me personally, I like to make that jump to showcase both, to make them almost synonymous, that right angles are square corners and square corners are right angles. Just as a teacher, whenever you see a right angle, throw the word square corner there. Whenever you see square corner, attach the word right angle there too. For common misconceptions or errors, it says that students can confuse some pairs of intersecting lines as perpendicular. And students can use corners of standard sheets of paper to compare, which we do in the Taking on the Best videos. Now in the videos, I'm using an image of a square, but showcasing how students can line up their square corner of a paper with a square, for instance, to see if it has those 4 right angles there. I also mentioned that students need to know that this is an example of perpendicular lines, right? When you have it vertically and horizontally, but they can also be crisscross like this as long as they are forming right angles on all sides. And that's where that sheet of paper checking the square corners really helps. Like this one right here, if you match up your square corner to all of these angles, you'll see that it lines up perfectly, even though it doesn't quite look like this set of perpendicular lines right there. So an activity like this would be great for matching as to whether it goes into the perpendicular or the not perpendicular box. Here are some tasks, and you can see that it's very wordy, although the wonderful thing about geometry is it is very visual. However, we have to prepare students to not always have the visual, but to take the words to form the visual. Like, what do intersecting lines look like? What does parallel mean? Intersecting lines, perpendicular. You know, they're not given examples of what that visual looks like. In this case right here, they have to actually provide an example of that, right? right? So these are what the standard would look like in action with some instructional tasks and items. All right, I think that's it for going over the standard. Let's go ahead and see what you have access to with your membership. So here we are at the website. We're going to click members, enter here, taking on the B.E.S.T, 3rd grade. Go down to the GR, Geometric Reasoning Standard. And we're right here, MA.3.GR.1.1, identify geometric features. So the first page that you are opened up to are the bronze resources. These are the video lessons and the student notes. So you can see here, we have a geometry vocabulary introduction video where we're going over a point, a line segment, a line, all of these, perpendicular, intersecting, parallel, okay, and isolation, we're going over those words. Then the next video is about identifying these features in shapes. Does this rectangle contain points? Does it contain line segments? Does it contain parallel, perpendicular, all that? And here's one where it's identifying geometric features in the real world, where we have a map of a city with roads and having to determine, do we have roads that are considered to be perpendicular? Do we have roads that are considered to be parallel or intersecting? All of that. Okay, so the whole goal with these videos is to make math fun and make it click for them. The expectation is not that they will walk away from these videos knowing everything, right? In order to understand it fully, they need to make sure that they have that practice element too, which definitely comes into play with the silver plan. So if you're a silver member or a gold member, you have access to more. Right here, you can go to click here for your printables. And you'll see that here's the video lesson that we just went over on the bronze page. It says identify the correct name for each figure and provide a brief description of each. So in the video, we're talking about what all these terms are and giving a brief definition of them. Then there's extra practice. So now that we've watched the video, use those notes to help you draw an example of each of these geometric terms. Okay? Then we have the next video lesson, identifying all the listed geometric features. After you watch the video, now let's have you practice on your own. Use your notes and go through them. Okay. And we have that third video lesson, name 2 roads that provide an example of intersecting line segments, and so on. And after you do that, there's an extra practice sheet for your students to practice using their notes from the video lesson to help them with this one. The final 2 activities in the silver plan, after you do the video lessons and all the extra practice that goes with it, you also have a math mission. And these are like math tasks, right? It's multi-part problem, multi-steps, kind of throwing everything together. So you can see we're talking about intersecting lines. Will says that intersecting lines are sometimes parallel. Do you agree or disagree with Will? It's taking the learning up a notch. Maya is thinking of a 4-sided polygon with only 1 pair of parallel lines and only 1 pair of perpendicular lines. Draw a figure that Maya could be thinking. And then finally, we have the math misconception mystery episode. You can see here it's a video lesson. It's right here. All you have to do is click play, and I will be your host and I will guide you and your students through the entire process. Basically what you do is it'll have a problem right here. So this problem says, does a rectangle always, sometimes, or never have perpendicular lines? So students will solve that either on their own or with a small group in your class, and then they will watch as 4 characters solve that same problem. 3 of the characters are going to make a mistake that students commonly make with these types of problems or with this skill, and only 1 character solves it correctly. So students have to listen really carefully as each character, which is really just me dressed up in these silly costumes, as each character reports how they arrived at their solution. Then they will fill out their detective report, stating who the most reasonable answer belongs to and evaluating the work of the other 3 characters, okay? So that's your silver. Bronze, you've got the video lessons and the student notes. For silver, you have the extra practice, you have the math tasks, you have math misconception mystery with your answer keys right there too. And then if you have the gold plan, you have access to even more. So with the gold plan, you can go back to your bronze and your silver resources at any time, but you also have access to a mini assessment. It's about 4 to 5 questions depending on the standard. You can see the standards right here. This one I think has 5, and it's got a variety of question types. You can see we're in mathematical settings and also real world settings here too. Okay. And there's an answer key for that right there. You also have access to these episodes breaking down the best. They are completely ad-free and right here with all of your standards. So it's a nice perk of being a gold member that you have it right here with all of your resources. Just know though that these videos are also available on YouTube. They just contain ads. So it's a nice little perk of being a gold member, having it right there. However, the main reason why if you've selected the gold plan, it's because you also wanted access to McCarthy Math 155, which is a daily math intervention that I created that's aligned to the Common Core standards, the previous standards that we have. Now, if you've had some experience between the transition from the Common Core standards to the B.E.S.T standards, you know that there are a lot of skills that do trickle over. There are just some slight differences. So there are many skills here that still apply. If we go, and I'll show you what can help you out with this. So I believe I'm going to go to 4th grade, okay? Because at 4th grade for Common Core was the one that we needed. All right, I'm scrolling down. You can see all these different units. And right here, Unit 13, two-dimensional figures. You can see right here we've got some geometry vocabulary where we're using a song to help us with all of the vocabulary words. Here you can see, I'm not here to disappoint. I'll get right to the point. What's your point? An exact spot in space. Like it or not, it kind of looks like a dot. Oh my gosh, you're right. So this is helping to model what a point looks like. It's just more practice. Join it to the end of a line and guess what it's called? I don't know, an endpoint. So it's a song with lyrics to help students remember all these terms. That's available in McCarthy Math 155. Again, this is 4th grade. So there's a couple 4th grade videos. This used to be a 4th grade standard. So there's a lot there for you. So check out day 129 to day 131. And I think that will help you with extra practice for what you need inside of this standard for 3rd grade for the B.E.S.T standards. All right, everybody, I think that is it. So I hope that this information in the video helped you to make sense of the standard. Now you know what's expected of your students and you know what resources you have access to. Before we go, let me remind you that what you choose to do with your life, it really does matter. Thank you so much for showing up to be the leader that you were born to be. And I just thank you for inviting me into your educational space. I know you're busy, so I will let you get back to whatever it is important that you got to get back to, and I will see you in the next episode, okay? Bye! Okay, so I know that I just said goodbye for now, but I'm going to ask you to do one more thing, okay? If you enjoyed this episode, please consider sharing it with your teacher friends or other leaders in education. That's how I get to continue doing what I love to do, which of course is supporting you all to the best of my ability. All right, for real now. Bye!